ChatGPT experience with your father. What was that all about?
Yeah, super fun. It was the best recent experience I've had with ChatGPT, maybe the best ever. So my dad is 76 years old, and he's going blind because his retina is detaching. It's kind of a disease that can happen. So by now he's almost completely blind, and he doesn't have a phone because it's hard for him to operate a phone. But I tried to get him to use ChatGPT in the voice mode, which was mind-blowing in a way. Let's see. I was going to answer a call from him, and I accidentally answered it on
You can call on the phone. You can still make a call on the cell phone or to.
Oh, he doesn't call from a cell phone. He has an old style phone. I mean, on the back end, it's sort of a mobile phone, but it looks like the old phone with a cord and stuff.
It's a Batmobile. You just pick up the.
Exactly, it's a Batmobile. And I picked it up on my computer instead of on the laptop instead of on the phone because it was closest. I just answered it, which was a good thing because then I could use the phone, and I realized that. Dad, do you want to talk to the AI? Because he's always obviously heard about ChatGPT, and now we can try it. So I said, do you have any questions to the AI? And he was like, yes, of course I do. Then he was asking, like, what would happen if I was in the middle of the earth? Would I be weightless? And I was like, that's a pretty good question to ask.
So you hear about the answer to it. Okay, please continue.
So he doesn't speak English, but ChatGPT is good at Swedish as well. So I talked to the phone and asked the question, and it responded back in Swedish, saying that yes, you would be weightless if you could stand in the middle of the earth, but it's very hot and etc. etc.
You would be squashed as well, probably.
Yes.
Did it say that?
No, it didn't say that, but. Yeah, it made a pretty good answer.
So your father that is going blind, he could suddenly then have a conversation through ChatGPT's voice mode in some way. Right?
Yeah.
He couldn't really read or type, but he can still speak properly. And then you connected him through the computer to the...
Yes. Yeah, so now whenever I talk to him, he's always like, "Can you get me to talk to the AI again?"
And then that of course evolves into the next project now. So how can I help my father? Yeah. What should he have?
Yeah,
what's your thinking here?
It started actually. I think it's the first time I got the idea was with the launch of the Rabbit R1 that we mentioned previously. I was like,
the Rabbit, the new device that is like just an AI phone without the phone features, more or less.
Exactly.
Yeah, we joked about it. You call it the AI walkie-talkie or something like that. I mean, like it's a really slimmed down feature set.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
It's like $200, you said?
Yeah, $200 to pre-order. It's also made, the design is made by a Swedish company, Teenage Engineering. They're super famous in like the world of synthesizers and stuff like that. So it's an interesting collaboration.
So you were starting to scan, okay, what is the most simplest approach to figure this out? And then this came out.
Yeah, so this was the start. This was the start of the whole thing. And then I realized, okay, so I missed the first batch and I'm going to have to wait for that phone. But maybe I can just buy him a cheap Android phone and customize it so he can start the ChatGPT in voice interface. I think that's one of the problems. Like if you start ChatGPT, you would also need to press a small button at the lower end of the screen, which would be difficult for him. So I think maybe it's possible to generate a macro that would open that up at the press of a button or something.
Some coding and some fiddling, and then you can do
some fiddling. Yeah, but it would be worth it, I think, because he's so happy when he's talking to it.
I think this is a nice little pet project, right?
Yeah, it's super
It
nice.
must be amazing for a person that is otherwise, going blind and having. I mean, speaking to people, of course, is the best thing. But if you don't have that, just being able to speak to someone that you can ask anything and get so much knowledge from would be an awesome.
And somebody that doesn't get tired of you.
But how far away are we from doing that? Via Alexa or via one of the other ones? Like you get a Home Assistant.
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know if anybody knows when they will catch up. Yeah. It's super weird, but
because you could imagine that you could thinking out of the box. You have Alexa and you have a certain chat app, AI app, where you press it and it goes into ChatGPT mode. So you literally can take away all the sort of. So instead of,
and I guess now with if you saw Samsung 24 release, they have the Gemini Nano, the latest kind of Google model that is actually built for embedded devices and phones. So they can have like live translation now in Samsung 24. Yes. And I guess now with that, they could put it in the Google Home Assistant as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're not far away now. They cannot be far away.
No, I think so.
They're already working on it, of course.
I wonder if there's another reason. I mean, why haven't they done it already? It should be so simple. As you're saying, if it's already in the Samsung phone, why isn't it in my Alexa? It's weird.
Alexa, but Google.
No, that's the Google one. Is
do you have an Alexa at home? Or?
I have one Alexa and one Google Home.
And which one is better, in your opinion, in terms of an understanding you or giving, the expected answers that you really want?
So excuse me, I think I'm using Alexa more, but that's just because of its placement.
Yeah.
I think Google Home has always been better because I had it in the kids' room and it's easier for them to talk because it can speak in Swedish. I don't think Alexa speaks Swedish.
I remember this vividly, driving cars and driving with Apple Siri versus driving and doing small tasks with the Google car. And to me, I completely stopped using Siri quite fast. Because it's like it never got the address right. It never got the, so I think for me, the Google incarnation has been superior in terms of understanding.
That must be a perfect product for your dad as well, to have just a Home Assistant and just speak to it all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Then you don't need the Rabbit or the Android phone. Or
and I forgot to mention maybe the best part of that interaction that I had with my dad was I realized that ChatGPT can also take photos, or it can read photos. So I tried it when he was still online, and I took a picture of my window. So I still had my the Christmas decorations, and I had this light, whatever it's called.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I took a picture and asked Google. I asked ChatGPT to describe what was in the picture, and he said, "There's a black star." So that was the light that I was talking about, and I can see it could see the building on the other side of the outside, right. And it could see the pots, the plants in the window pane, and it said it's probably a living room, which it was. It's amazing, and it's like
that must be awesome for your dad to
exactly
ask it to explain any image.
Yes, so I mean, he goes out for a walk sometimes, and that's a real journey for him because it's not certain that he will get home again. It's super hard for him. So, just for him to be able to take a picture and say, "Is there a motorway in front of me?" That's so. This is really important.
But it's an interesting anecdote here because it's sort of, it opens up how little we have scratched the surface of the applications and how we can tweak it for different situations. So I think voice is a quite nice addition, right? Have you started using it?
Not that much, no. I can't say.
I'm trying to use it now. I think it's interesting to. It becomes more of a discussion in that way. It feels more natural. It's always difficult though to get it to not start talking again, because once you make a little bit of a pause, it's hard to not get it to speak even when you're not done with the prompt.
And I usually ask questions with the weird technical words in it, and that's really hard to do through voice.
Exactly. Yeah.
So interesting, and I wish you the best with your father, and hope that Google actually do their job and properly put Gemini into.
And a little bit curious about the Rabbit. If that's a gimmick,
R1.
Is the rabbit gimmicky stuff, or is it useful?
I think it's probably useful. It seems legit from what I can say.
So the bottom line is that everything, there is this Japanese saying, shindugo. Have you heard about that expression? So you can Google shindugo, and it's a little bit, it's Japanese words for useless inventions. and you can find so many fun pictures of like the most useless things that people have sort of, I saw chopsticks with a fan on it, in order for and it's like, well, it's a good idea, but it's kind of stupid, right? Etc. etc.
Oh.
So is this shindugo is the core question, right? Is this, and time will tell in a way, is this an invention that has a place?
Yeah.
Potentially has, I think.
Well, with that, we'd love to welcome you here, Jesper Fredriksson. You're a dear friend of mine, and we known each other for a long time. I'm trying to think, when we met, it was at the Rexus, the Recommender System Conference in Vienna.
Maybe 2015, maybe 2016, somewhere around there.
16, 15 at some point. And that was awesome times, I remember. Vienna.
Oh.
And following conferences in the coming years as well. And I've enjoyed at least a lot of very deep discussions with you and your friends, and it's a pleasure to actually have you here, and hopefully we can have some really deep discussions now as well here in this podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And you're an AI engineer at Volvo, and you had some other positions that's very interesting previously, but let me start simply by asking, who is Jesper Fredriksson?
So I am, as you said today, I'm an AI engineer. That's where I call myself, at least.
Well, what do you think about these roles? I mean, there are so many different roles now. You can be a data engineer, you can be a front-end engineer, you can be an ML engineer. What's the difference between an ML engineer and an AI engineer? Is there one?
I think the way I think about it is we're moving into generative AI, and then it becomes more of a focus on the coding skills, I think, to understand the technology behind. But even more, I think there's been a long progression where we become, sort of the science part of this becomes more and more commoditized, whereas the engineering becomes more and more important.
Because you've been a data scientist, of course, previously as well.
I mean, formally my title is still data scientist because I just moved over as I was from my previous company. So Volvo brought in a subsidiary from them. But AI engineer describes better what I'm actually doing, which is to make really useful products out of AI, basically. To use, in many cases, it's just using an API. It could be using a local model as well. It doesn't matter really. But using engineering to solve interesting problems.
But this is a deep question here, because what is more important, the science part or the engineering part? And we can put that on the list, because I think they are in some ways equally important, but they are very different actually. And the next question is, do we need more scientists or more engineers? Yeah. And that is maybe the bottom line question. And I have my view on that.
Yeah, but I call myself also primarily an engineer before a scientist, but I also have been a scientist as well. But let's we go down the rabbit hole just a slight bit.
That's a good one, isn't it?
We can easily get stuck here. But,
I've heard this phrase before.
But just very quickly, at least if I give my view a bit, and then please let me know what you think about it. And for me, science is for the purpose of building knowledge, and engineering is for the purpose of building a product or finding value.
Could be.
And you need engineering to build knowledge. So there are overlaps, and you need also science to build products and value. So they're both overlapping, but there is a clear distinction, I would say, in the purpose of what you're doing. So if you're more into the data scientist role, the purpose is really to do proof of value in some way, that you build the knowledge that there is some kind of value you can find, but you don't build the value, you don't produce the value. But if you're an engineer, the purpose it's not necessarily to understand if you can do something, it's really how you should do something.
I totally agree. I think the movement I've been seeing is that this thing about having the original idea, which is sort of the science part of it, or improving the concept, that's always going to be important. But that's only so far along the way. It's only the start of the journey. And if you look at what companies are doing, there's room for maybe a few data scientists in a company, but there's room for a lot of engineers. That's so much more needed, because making the proof of concept, that's easy. You can do it in a notebook, but then you have to do all the hard part of making it into production, which is also very interesting.
But this is a huge dilemma, because I think we set us up for a problem in 2012, 13, 14 when this was evolving, because we hired people for the science part when we really needed a shitload of engineers.
Yes.
And I think, we know for a fact how many notebooks are out there in production, right?
Yeah.
Which is a testament that the wrong person got the engineering job.
Yeah.
And I think this is a major shift that started maybe 2022, where we are talking more and more product. I've been involved in large enterprises, and we have AI initiatives and AI projects. And then when I talk and listen to you, and how the real hyperscalers are talking, it's product teams. And there's a huge difference in understanding for funding, governance, steering, and setup. And we go all the way back to the technical depth of machine learning.
I would say the movement started earlier, but yes, you're definitely right. I think it's when I started at my previous company, Volvo Car Mobility, which is the company behind the service Volvo On Demand, then everybody in the data team was data scientists. And we quickly realized that we're not doing data science work. We're doing everything but data science, basically, because that's what you do in a startup, which it was.
And I think also Elon Musk has really shown risen the status of engineering. Before,
right.
I remember when I was at Spotify, we called everyone a data scientist, but in reality, they were building click view dashboards. And it's, that is valuable as well, but don't, use the wrong term for it. There are still value, and people, value different things and have different passion and interest and skills. Some people should be more of a science people, and other people that are more interested in engineering, which I think is super funny and more funny even, they should work with that. And for a company, I think it's important also, as you say, to understand the proper balance here, because you need both.
Yeah.
But what is the balance?
Exactly.
It's not 50-50.
It's a question of expectations also. If you come into a company and think you're going to do data science, and then you do great click view dashboards, then you're not going to be happy. And if you hire data scientists and they do something else, then maybe you're not happy either.
But to some degree, we are ourselves as an industry at fault here, because we are trying to find words and figuring this out.
Yeah.
And some words stick, right? Yeah. And that just takes the majority of the population who's not really into the details into the wrong path.
But I like your title. That's basically what I'm trying to say. I remember still speaking to John Bosch, professor in Gothenburg, Chalmers, and we had him on the show as well. And he spoke about AI engineering. And
this is a couple of years ago. So I would concur that the mature companies that actually works hardcore, they understood the product angle and the engineering angle earlier, way earlier. But the majority is still almost getting there now. This is my observation.
Fair enough.
Well, okay, we established you have the coolest title, I think, AI engineer.
Yeah, so data science is not the sexiest job.
No.
AI engineer is the sexiest job on earth.
Cool. Perhaps you can just elaborate a bit more. Before you came to Volvo, what did you do then? What did you work with?
Right, so I can start from the beginning. I'm engineer from the start, and then I moved into by chance. I ended up in brain imaging. I was in a project to generate databases about brain imaging and then doing analysis on those as a PhD project. I did my half-time dissertation, and then I ran out of time, and then I moved into doing the same thing, more or less, for a company. And I moved from working with the healthy human brain, so to speak, like understanding the function of the human brain, to looking at aging in Icelandic people, of all things. They have an interesting population with genomics and stuff. So it's they have a lot of gene data on people.
Are we going to be able to reverse aging?
That is a very good question. Now we're going into a rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's skip it. Ignore it.
I think so, but let's skip it. Yes. Okay, so yes, so that was the start. Moving into aging and brain imaging, and I was working for a consultancy company that did all sorts of things. So this was one of the things. We moved into doing some sort of quality assurance of the scanners that produced those images, which was also fascinating, even if it sounds maybe boring with quality assurance, but you have to really understand the dynamics that create the images. So it feels like I spent a year or two in Fourier space doing that, which was super fun. But then eventually, it felt like I had sort of hit a dead end on this brain imaging path, which is maybe premature. Maybe we'll get back to that later. Let's say that. But I moved into I moved into data science instead, and that's now we're back into our discussion about data science and engineering, etc. And I worked at different companies in Stockholm with data in some respects since then. And then, then I ended up in this startup owned by Volvo, doing this product of car sharing. And after that, in October of last year, we moved into the mother company as a strategic shift from the Volvo organization. So that's where I'm at now, and I'm working currently half and half. So I'm working 50% as a data scientist at the car sharing service, and 50% with generative AI at Volvo Cars.
So it's actually you're actually reporting into two different sort of streams in this sense.
It's not ideal. I'm trying to make that work, but
so one is around the algorithms and optimization of the car sharing service.
Yes.
Whilst when it comes to generative AI topics, are you then looking at use cases across Volvo Cars?
Yes,
more broadly.
Yeah, exactly. So Volvo Cars is of course a huge company, and I don't even understand how huge it is yet. I started in October. I'm working at this small part of Volvo, which is maybe 1,500 people, which is called something like commercial digital, that's sort of the sphere that I'm working within now. That's the part of Volvo that's in Stockholm.
Yeah, so Volvo, I think they made a strategic choice to set up this commercial digital setup, so to speak, a couple of years back, I guess, and Mobile M was part of that. And
M was actually a precursor. So the previous company, Volvo Car Mobility, we started a little bit earlier, and then Volvo Cars followed and started the tech hub in the same offices that we had. So
that's the story.
Building.
Gotcha.
I mean, awesome. Perhaps we should try to move into the main theme of the discussion. And we were planning to speak a bit about RAG models, and then perhaps moving also into autonomous agents.
Yeah, so from rags to agents, or how did we frame it?
Sounds like from rags to riches or something.
So rags to riches becomes rags to agents in the space and time of AI.
Well, perhaps we can start a bit moving into the RAG part. What is really Retrieval Augmented Generation? And perhaps you can put it in a context of Volvo as well. If you can have some concrete example and just start to explain a bit, what can you do with RAG at Volvo?
I think I want to start from ChatGPT, because everybody knows what ChatGPT is. You ask a question to the AI and it answers in best of worlds. But there are some problems with that. If you want to work with, let's say, company data, you have some proprietary data that you want to ask about, then ChatGPT doesn't know about that data. Also, it may produce hallucinations. It may say things that are not true if they don't know. If it doesn't know, then it may make things up. So the solution to that, or rather a way to alleviate those problems at least, was the Retrieval Augmented Generation that took really shape in last year, I would say.
It became a hyped word, one of the buzzwords of 2023, the RAG. So I don't think we talked about RAG in 2022. We couldn't have.
Not in 22, no. In 23, yes, but
relax and Google.
RAG.
Yeah. Okay. So the solution to that is we try to bring in our proprietary data or some kind of data we have that can both ground the model.
But just to elaborate on what you said before, one problem, of course, is hallucination, that the model just makes up stuff unless it actually has some data related in its parameters of the billions and trillions of parameters that ChatGPT has. But I guess another problem is it can't really find new data. So if you have your own data and you want ChatGPT to be able to reason about that or find that, there is no way to do that unless you use something like RAG, right?
Yeah. So and it's basically it's basically prompting. It's basically taking part of what you already know. You bring it into the prompt to say, this is what I know about this problem. Can you help me solve this problem?
So I would say even it's like a hack, since you can't really change the parameters of the model. You just put some data you want it to have access to into the prompt instead.
It's a very pragmatic solution. And of course, the alternative is to do something like fine-tuning, where you would continue the training of the model and use your data to make the model actually understand what you're doing. But this is sort of the hacky way to do it.
Yep, good.
And I mean, like, elaborate a little bit, like what has been the limitations? We know, and we have talked about tokens and all that kind of stuff. And so in the space of thinking about doing these kind of hacks, the RAG hack, what has been sort of the constraints on that approach, like that you needed to think about from the beginning, how to come around tokens?
Size of the context window and stuff like that.
Size, yeah, exactly.
So it's 32K, right? In the biggest.
Yeah. So if we're talking about the context window, that's I don't remember what it started with. I think maybe 4K from the beginning, and then GPT-4 came out with a version that had 32K. But now we're far ahead of that. I think we're at 100,000 tokens in the newest GPT-4.
I'm not sure actually. Is it really that much?
We can Google that. I think I remember a number like 128 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 128K.
I think Claude has that, but I'm not sure if...
the newest GPT-4 has that.
Okay.
The GPT Turbo.
This is the turbo. I mean, like this is a part of the incremental opportunity, because I think the big deal is like, oh, wow, if we have 128K, that context window is quite large. You can actually literally take large.
It's super large.
You can take a lot of data now.
It is super large, but there's a lot of buts to that, because you can't effectively use all of those 128Ks. Right.
So the turbo goes to 128K.
Yeah. The problem is you can't use all of those, because then you will end up with problems. It will. There's this famous paper called what is it called? Forgetting in the middle, something like that. It always ends up. It's better to put things in the beginning or at the end of the prompt, because it somehow forgets the middle. It's a little bit like people.
Like as people, well. Right? How you do a keynote speech.
It's funny. It's
really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. It's anthropomorphizing already now, but it is inevitable.
Okay. But it's quite a lot of tokens or words you can still put in the prompt. So you can use the RAG to put in quite a lot of words.
Is that the primary? Is that one key constraint when you're thinking about RAGs, or can you circumvent this constraint?
So it definitely is a constraint, because you can't put in all your data in there. if you have a software project, it can easily go beyond that. And even if it were, I mean, you don't have the full 128K to work with. Let's say I wouldn't use more than, let's say, 40,000-50,000 at max.
And this is learned by experience, sort of thing.
Sort of
when it starts deteriorating.
I'm still finding out like where's the optimum, where's the limits. The limits is the hard limit is 128K. But
what's the optimum then?
But the optimum, that is really the question. So the day when this was released, this 128K, I was implementing the RAG system for one of our things that we're working on, and so the solution that I was going to talk about is to use semantic search to know what to put in the context, to what to put in the prompt. So you have all this big thing that you want to put in, but you select only a few relevant documents based on how similar the documents are to the question that you're asking.
So you're doing other things now to build a system to be smarter, efficient,
yes.
More to the point.
Yeah. So this hack that we're explaining now is like, okay, so we can't put everything in, but we're trying to find, using embeddings, to find what are the most similar things in your document store to the question that you're asking, and then you use that as context. But when this model was released, it was during the OpenAI Developer Day or whatever it's called. Then I realized this is so much context. I don't need to do the semantic search. So I tried to just stuff everything in there, and it worked. But I could see that there was a limit to it, and it was far smaller than 128.
So you were sort of coming out of the developer day. Oh, I skipped 2 features on my backlog, and I can do this instead. And then
exactly.
Fuck, it's not that simple.
Yeah, but I could get to the proof of concept at least. So I have. So this example is I think I showed it to Anders at some point. It's a BI tool where you can ask questions to your BigQuery database by sending the natural language question to OpenAI and getting a SQL query back, and then sending that SQL query to BigQuery and getting a result back.
So we are now talking about another key topic in itself. Where is the evolution of BI going? But let's park that.
That's a super interesting.
Because that's exactly what you're working on.
That's one of the things, yes.
I think we need to just elaborate or explain a bit more what you said. So we had a natural language question that you asked to ChatGPT, but you can get a BigQuery, which is basically an SQL database that
tabular data
provides, and it has an SQL interface. But ChatGPT can actually output an SQL in BigQuery language that you can send into it.
Exactly.
Then it gets some structured data back, but I guess it's also get a lot of text. Is it mainly text that you retrieve, or is it more structured data? Or
I mean, I get the results of a SQL query, and I mean, it's just the BigQuery API calling it through pandas, and then you get back numbers, or it can be
whatever is in the BigQuery.
Whatever is in. So you get structured data back from the database. It could be unstructured as well, but it's mainly structured.
Text fields, I guess.
But without going into details, could we elaborate a little bit about the chain here and what's the use case? So someone wants a report on something, I guess, or what is it? So without going into specifics, like what is it? What is the concrete manipulation here?
Yeah, so this is sort of somewhat of a hobby project of mine, but it is built on my sort of experience and sometimes frustrations of being in a data team. In this case, it's about in a data team, you typically have a lot of people from the organization asking you questions about, in the car sharing business, it's like, how many journeys did we have yesterday, or how many users signed up or something? And they usually post that to Slack, and somebody from the data team picks it up. It's in a team channel. And it provides a lot of value to some of the people in the organization, but it's often not the most fun thing to drop everything that you have and answer that question. So it seemed like maybe with ChatGPT I was like, maybe we can automate this. So then me and a backend engineer decided to have this as a hobby project to see, can we put in a Slack bot that can answer these questions? Wow. So that's now in production in this Volvo Car mobility car sharing company.
Cool. But I think the key point here is this is also where it becomes engineering, because it's not only about making the actual query work, it's about contextualizing and putting it in a way so it's adoptable in the larger context of the enterprise. And in this sense, people, they use Slack and they go there. So we don't change their behavior. We create a Slack bot.
Yes. Yeah, I think Slack was a real good vehicle for this. It's everybody's in there, and it doesn't matter if you're technical or not. Everybody's in there all day. So so
in short, a non-technical person can ask a natural language question about the number of cars per month or something. Yeah. And that gets translated by ChatGPT to a BigQuery question, SQL query, and it actually replies back the results in some way.
Yeah. We currently don't have any graphs or something, but that could be a next step.
It's basically the table that is directly returned. Yeah. But how does ChatGPT know about the schema in BigQuery? Do you provide that in a prompt, or?
So that is the context. That is what I was talking about. This thing when it got up from 8K or 32K up to 128K, all of a sudden I could just stuff in the whole schema. The whole schema. It's a little bit more than the schema. So we're using something called DBT, Data Build Tool, which is standard, and
ETL tool,
yeah, exactly. And then we have, as the last step, there's a YAML file which has the schema in a way, but it's more than the schema. It also has some information.
It's the metadata.
Let them answer.
I'm trying to see if I can get this.
Good. You're on the right track. So it's metadata in the form of, for example, enums. If there's a value saying B2B, B2C, so it will know that, because that's otherwise a hard thing for ChatGPT to know about my database. What are the different values in a table, in a column? But that's if you have these enums, like something that's enumerations, like you have a limited number of values, and that's in this file, for example. That's a big help. There's also a little bit of descriptions in this file if somebody has made documentations.
Cool. So in that way, ChatGPT understands how to formulate the BigQuery query.
Yes,
simply works.
Yeah, it's really like magic when you see that the first time. Like, I can answer more or less any question. It's like within.
But let's dissect now, for me who doesn't understand shit, the tool chain here, because we talked about pandas as well. You talked about YAML here. So here we're sort of we're going from Slack and we're doing a query comes out, and then basically the prompt, so that whole chain, sort of, what are the key components here? The panda, the YAML file, the et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's. I think we've been through all of it really. So it's like a Slack bot has its own API towards Slack, and then there's the context that is stored not in a vector database, because we didn't go that far. It's still too small to use a vector database, but it's just stored on file. So there's YAML files, and at query time, when a user question comes in, we're trying to find, if we're doing the semantic search, which we're not doing at the moment, but we started with doing that, then we're trying to find which of these parts of the schema or the YAML file are most relevant to this question. And then we provide that basically as if you're using ChatGPT, as in cutting and pasting into the window. That's what we're doing. That's a hack. I'm really happy.
Cutting out the job of the data engineer in this case, right? Or allowing direct access to data from non-technical people in some.
I'm thinking of we're cutting out the data analyst.
That's because the old way, the Slack prompt would be picked up by the data engineering team, who had to go in and do an SQL query.
A data analyst, he just
So, it's the data team would need to do it, and it's at least in my team, it could be a data engineer, it could be a data analyst, or it could be a data scientist.
But it's fairly junior task in terms of SQL or whatever.
It is, but it's. I think you can have junior and senior data analysts and data scientists as well. So it's
right.
It can be senior as well. For more complicated queries,
yes,
you need a senior data analyst as well. Yeah.
And how important in this context then, in the old way, was it to really know the schema well? I mean, so it's like really, really deep domain knowledge.
Yeah. This is actually one of the most profound things about this. For me, as a data scientist working on this, it's hard to keep track of all the tables because, it's evolving all the time.
Exactly.
So somebody builds a new table, or somebody changes the definition, somebody changes the name of a column. It's really hard to, and I need to remember which table was this information in. I think I would need like a ChatGPT just to remember all the different tables and columns. But that's super easy to ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't need to think about anymore like where is this information, because that is just automatic for.
But this is profound, because one of the key challenges has always been. We need data stewards who actually knows what the content is in here, and but the data steward doesn't get what the schema is. It's useless, right? And this is a major headache for most companies who are not living in sort of the coding world. And here, all of a sudden, now you kind of circumvent the problem.
Yeah, and it's a super interesting topic.
Awesome. So we had an introduction to RAG models, and you also given a use case example that sounds really powerful in Volvo as well, in having like an automated data analyst in some sense.
Yeah,
it's really cool. And if we started now on this end, we found this kind of limitation that ChatGPT has without being able to access your own data, but now it can with RAGs. But if we go to the other end then and speak more about autonomous agents, what is your preferred way of describing what is really an autonomous agent?
It's a good question. It's also much harder to talk about because we're not really there yet. There are very few agents that we have. I think the first thing that comes after RAG is sort of actions. So we usually don't want just the information. We want to take an action. You could say in this case that we talked about, this data analyst, that it performs an action. It actually gets the job done. It's like you're asking a question and you get a number or something like a number back, and that's getting things done. But in many cases, we started talking about the Rabbit R1, for example, this small device. Maybe you want to book an Uber or something, and then you need to take an action to do that. You need to do the actual booking. You're not just happy with saying, go to the Uber app and select. That's not what you want to do. You want to do something. So that's one part of it, I think, to be able to perform actions. But there's also this thing of autonomous. What does that mean? And the way I think about it is, it's something that can do things on their own, obviously, but it usually pertains to some higher goal. Like you can specify, I want to perform this task, but it really needs to perform a lot of subtasks to be able to do that. So you need to divide the problem into smaller tasks, find out a strategy for how to solve the smaller tasks, and tie them together and solve something bigger.
Could we phrase that? We have to quote Elon Musk at least a couple of times. And if we take self-driving cars, a properly level 5 self-driving car, that would take a lot of actions, and it would be fully autonomous as well, if it's level 5 at least, where you don't even have a wheel to take control anymore, right? That would be like the optimal, or the ultimate kind of autonomous agent in some sense. At least in self-driving world, it could be even more general, of course.
Exactly. So it's definitely an agent in a constrained but still very general setting. Yeah. It's a super hard problem, and it's so interesting to take that in. If you contrast that to ChatGPT, for example, where you just feed it a lot of textual data, and all of a sudden it knows how to answer everything, whereas the task of self-driving is much more constrained, and we worked on it for years and years and years, and we're still not quite there.
I think it's kind of interesting. It's like a paradox in some sense, because you would normally say that ChatGPT is general, or it's not super general, but it's more general than a lot of other AI models at least. And then if you take self-driving cars, it's rather specialized kind of task. In reality, it's just brake, accelerate, turn left or right. Yeah. That's the only thing you do. But to do that, you need to have so much general knowledge, much more than ChatGPT has. So even ChatGPT would never be able to drive a car today.
But isn't this conversation somewhere about talking about generality in at least two different dimensions?
Yeah, I think so.
And because there's one generality about all the, all the stuff that you can search, but it's very narrow in terms of what you can do with it. And here you have the opposite, maybe.
No, but I think, if you just use the terms that Elon used, I think it will be a bit clear. I mean, the ChatGPT is really good in perception, I think. But if you have a self-driving car, you have at least three different parts of it. Perception is one, just taking the sensor data and trying to understand what that means and move it into vector space. But then you have the planning problem, and I think that's what you started to speak about breaking down into smaller tasks and being able to plan what to do and when to do them. But then you have a third problem about taking action, the control, as he calls it. So control is basically decide, if you should brake, accelerate, turn left or right. And all of these are really hard to do. But I think, you need all of them, I think, to be a properly autonomous agent.
Yes, that's definitely the case.
But if we start a summary definition of autonomous agent.
I don't know. What are you thinking, Jesper?
I don't have a good definition for autonomous agent. I think with the way I explained that it has to do with actions and planning.
Yeah.
And that's basically it. You have the perception. You need to also, have some input, right?
Yeah, you need to have some input.
So perception, planning, control.
Yeah, I'm still stuck a little bit with what you said about ChatGPT, that it has good perception. I mean, in a way, at least the first model, it has just reading, so it has very limited. If you compare it to a human, we have many more perceptions that we can.
ChatGPT can have vision today and audio as well, so at least it's a bit more.
Yeah, and it's really.
But that has something to do with perception, yes. But what about, I'm trying to use your words, the world model here or something like that? Because if you think about it, they have the cameras, which is sort of perception, yes. They have the vector space that creates the world model. Then they have planning and action. So the vector space is the fourth part, is the world model here, in some sense, right?
The fourth part, is it?
I mean, like if we say perception, planning, and control, are we done? And I think the
perception moves into vector space, where you do the planning and the control.
And what I mean is that actually the vector space itself is what creates the world model, where you can do the planning and the control.
Yes.
So actually there are four problems then.
No, I don't think so. It's
you don't
still
think
three.
So? Why not?
Perception moves into vector space. That is the world model. That's perception.
But you have a world model, but I have a world model, but I still haven't said where I'm going to go. So I can't start the planning.
But all of them happen in the vector space, right? In the world model. So
yeah. Right. So clearly. Yeah. But isn't it a separate problem that you have an accurate world model?
No, perception moves that.
Compared to...
I would say perception moves from the sensory input to the world model, vector space. Planning operates in the world model.
Yeah.
Control moves from the world model back to actuators, the actions.
So I get it. And I'm going to push you here. If I'm going to put engineers now to do the different things to make this work, I need engineers to work on the perception part. I need engineers to think about what the vector space is all about. And I need people to think about and engineer how the planning and control is taking place. So I get it to four problems that the actual.
Why four?
Because the vector space itself needs to be created.
But that's not a problem in itself. I mean, that's just a representation.
Yeah, all right.
I'm thinking a little bit about when we talked about ether. Like there's some medium around us.
Exactly.
It's a little bit like that. But I think we don't have engineers that are concerned about ether. I think that's Anders' point to it.
Interesting.
So autonomous agents are, if you compare that at least to ChatGPT, it's clearly not an autonomous agent. I think we can all agree that ChatGPT is not. RAGs add a bit more closer to an autonomous agent. At least it can. At least if you do it like you did, because I think you added more. You added also the ability to take action and ask questions to BigQuery, and then it took some action. It's limited, but at least some action it could take. And that created a bit more into the vector space, which is basically the results from BigQuery. But then to have a properly autonomous agent, I guess it needs to also be able to have much more control abilities or actions to take, right?
Yeah, I think it needs to be. I mean, you can have very limited agents. And maybe you could classify this product as a very limited agent. But I think where both you and I are going with this is towards AGI. That's why this is interesting.
Can I just go in a small rabbit hole here? Let's take a chess-playing computer machine. Is that an autonomous agent? What do you think?
I don't know. It's if it, I'm going to take a cheap way out here. If it moves the actual pieces, then it performs an action.
Just in a virtual world, so to speak.
I don't know. I would think of it as an agent.
Yeah, me so.
So a digital chess game that actually can play is in a sense an autonomous agent.
Very limited one. Yeah. It's very limited what it can plan. The vector space for it is just the chessboard, so to speak.
It's like, did you see this research paper on learning an agent to play Minecraft? I thought that was quite. I talked to somebody who said that they were cheating a little bit.
Because NVIDIA came out with a paper on this very recently.
I think this was maybe fall of 2023 that I read this.
This is just 1 week ago, but NVIDIA came out with another agent paper for playing Minecraft.
Okay. Yeah. No, I did not see that. It makes sense. I think Minecraft is maybe an optimal way to study agents. It's like an open world where you can do a lot of things. I have not played so much Minecraft myself, but I have kids who played it, so I know sort of how difficult it is to learn all of these skills. It's like you have to combine different materials together, and then you get this other material. It's like in real life, you take, let's say you take coal and you make diamonds out of it or wherever. So you have to learn to do that. And in this framework, the agent learned how to do this, how to get these skills in Minecraft just by playing.
Can we talk about some sort of spectrum here in terms of super simple, super narrow autonomous agents, and then further and further? Because one way of, I think it's really hard to think about this is that you go too far, right? So you're trying to figure out a very generalist autonomous agent.
Well, I guess the really far one could be the Tesla autonomous bot thing. Basically a humanoid in a physical world that is supposed to take an action that it can.
That would be when it works in production and is doing certain tasks at the production plant, at the manufacturing. I guess
or at the home of some elderly person.
Then it would be
at your dad trying to help him with his
Then
tasks.
it would be an autonomous agent for a specific task or a specific set of tasks.
Or if it can do anything, then it's very general.
Is that the Optimus? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
I think in a way the human is the perfect agent.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect,
but not the perfect
emulation.
I think we humans are very limited as well, right?
I think as agents we're pretty good.
We're still leading, I would say, in generality, but it's easy to imagine an agent that is much more general than humans are.
But it's interesting, right? Because let's take the human example. If I want an autonomous agent, we are not autonomous agents for everything from birth, right? You need to learn a craft, you need to learn a skill. So if I want an autonomous agent playing football, you need to go. You need to acquire the learning and skills and the rules of the game, right? Then of course it's generalist because I can, like a computer, I can program another sport into it, and now we can have an autonomous agent playing ice hockey, right? So in a sense, it's building something which is an autonomous agent means, yes, we have the container for it now, but then you kind of need to set it. Then the learning comes in for each and every fundamental frame, I guess.
I would say humans are super plastic in that way. We can change a lot, and there are, of course, machines are getting much more
plastic.
Plastic. It feels weird to say, but I think they're getting
the plastic brain.
You're talking about plasticity in the brain, like how actual physical change happens in the brain when you do things. So they talk about when the brain changes shape as plasticity. And you have these things like if you lose part of your brain, then you can actually other parts of the brain can take over and make up for that. Which is, I mean, can you imagine what that would be in a computer system? Like if parts of the computer dies, and then it will just move over to another part of the computer.
Very far from that.
Yeah, so it's like humans are super plastic in many ways, and I think we're far away from that when it comes to computers. But computers are good at other things. It's like if they do a calculation, and it's usually, if it's not ChatGPT, then it's always dead on, of course. So that's the.
But the argument or the discussion is here then a little bit about autonomous agents, a generalist autonomous agents that we can then frame for different purposes, versus having one single purpose.
Let's go back to your question about like the spectrum of very small tasks and bigger tasks. I think that's a good sort of dichotomy or a way to think about agents, I think. So I think we're now at the baby steps of this. We can do things like, I mean, this again, Rabbit R1, this small phone-like thing that can maybe order an Uber for you, if we ever get that device, but it seems likely. So that's the level we're at now. We can perform relatively small things, but you can easily see how this gets more and more complex. I have my favorite problem that I think about is coding. Being able to, let's say we have an agent that could code. So right now we're at the level when you can do like a function. You can have relatively good results from ChatGPT or similar tools to create one function. That's a very limited task, but it's, I think, already with a little bit better language models, like say GPT-5, I think we could be at the level where we could. So I had this task of reorganizing a Jupyter notebook this week to make it into a standalone Python program. And that is a very tough job because it's a lot of moving parts to it. But if you can imagine a little bit better language model that has a more reliable context that you can work with, and you know that when you put context in there, it's going to stay there, and you can work with that. And I think you could easily have, let's say, one small notebook. Let's say 500 lines of code or something like that. It's not a small notebook, but it's relatively limited. I think that's the level we could be at of this year, that we can reorganize stuff without having to interfere too much. So that's I think what's really fascinating about the agentic movement that I think we're going to see now, with both the models becoming better, but also I think we're going to have scaffolding around it that makes it easier to do these things. That's like we talked about LangChain before and things like that. I think we're going to see that kind of movement.
Like a GPT engineer that is from a dear Swedish friend here.
I didn't know.
He created GPT engineer, and it's a perfect example of scaffolding, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
But maybe this is for the last bits of this podcast, and not now. I think when we start talking about agents, we can have quite deep philosophical questions on the AI utility function and what type of agents do we want to produce. And you can take this really deep into principal agent theory and the agency problem, which is all about even down into how we organize companies and that what the agent is living in a principal agent relationships to something, someone wants something done, right? Mm-hmm. So it's super important that the principle is fair, that the principle is right, and it's super important that the principle is able to put the task in the right way to the agent. Otherwise you will have agent deviations. So how can you minimize deviation? So there's a huge rabbit hole here. If you put agents everywhere, and what happens if they are not done with the right?
It feels like we're going towards a paperclip, problem of if you design an agent to produce as many paperclips as possible, and then it takes the whole resources of the whole world to produce all the paperclips.
Yeah. I mean, all these things, right? Yeah. If you put this at scale, what happens? When we go into autonomous agents, there is some fundamental big questions that opens up. Yeah, but that's the philosophical angle on this.
Yeah, we have all the ethical problems of what if the agents are done for bad purposes. Let's say we want to overthrow a government somewhere by
you can have the good intentions, but there is blind spots in the way you set up the agents that has unintended consequences.
Yeah, I think this is also we're already going towards AGI when we're talking about this. This is once we have this super powerful thing, we can call it agents or we can call it AGI, we're going to have to think about how we use it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
It's time for AI News, brought to you by AIAW Podcast.
Awesome. So, time for a small middle break before we continue the discussion with Jesper Fredriksson about going from RAG to autonomous agents in some way. But before that, let's pick up some of the favorite news that we heard over the last week. And each one of us can choose a couple of topics. Who wants to go first? Jesper, do you have a favorite news article that you want to speak
I can start. Yeah? So I think I hinted towards in the beginning that I maybe stopped the brain imaging work prematurely. I've been following eagerly for many years now the mind reading AI story. Already in 2011, the first paper was released from a research group where they tried to reconstruct an image, or rather a film, of what participants were seeing when they recorded fMRI scans. So they showed something to the participants, and then they observed the activities in the voxels of the brain scan.
Can you do that fMRI in real time, really? Or how did they do that?
No, I think they did it. They probably recorded it and then they used it afterwards. Okay. You can do fMRI in real time, but the question is what you do with it. I don't think you can get the results and work with it. It takes some time. Anyway, this is a long ago, this paper. But what caught my attention this week was something that looks very weird. It's called Morpheus, which is a transformer model for a specific purpose that has to do with brain imaging. It's made by a startup company called Prophetic, and I have a very overloaded video where they describe this. It's in a way very American and very over the top. And they talk about lucid dreaming. Yeah, it's a device. It's a device that is made for getting you in a state where you have lucid dreaming. I have my doubts that it's going to work. But the underpinnings of this is like a trend that's been going for a long time, this mind reading thing. And what they're adding in this product is something that would be super fun to have worked on if I was still in the brain imaging game, is something that can, while you go to sleep, you're supposed to wear this headband. and it can register what your activities in the brain are.
EEG.
It uses EEG, and already that is questionable how well it performs. fMRI definitely, but EEG a little bit shaky. And then it reads off this activity and tries to steer it towards activities that look like lucid dreaming.
How do they steer it? They put electrical impulses somehow, or
they use a new technology that I haven't heard about before. That's called ultrasound. It's something. I'm forgetting. It's called. Let's say I think it's called transcranial ultrasound something.
I think he will.
Yeah. Anyway, it's. I don't think that they will succeed with this, but I still think it's going to be an interesting story to follow because.
Is it ultrasonic sound that they actually use to modify the brain waves somehow?
Yes. So supposedly they modify. There are other experiments with this where they're trying to do things like cure. I'm not sure if they really work, but there's something about curing addictions using this technology. For me, it's a new thing. I've heard about transcranial magnetic stimulation before, where you sort of induce currents. But this is a new thing. I hadn't heard about it before. So it's going to be interesting to follow. I don't believe in it, but I believe in a lot of the.
You think it's fake, or?
No, I don't think it's fake. I think they're really trying to do this. It seems like it follows some kind of trajectory. I buy into what they're saying, but I don't think it's solid enough to work to really put you in a lucid dreaming state.
I've been to meditations, and I think all this kind of interesting technology and trying to understand your own brain is really interesting. And perhaps we should describe what lucid dreaming really is.
That's true. Yeah.
Do you have a good definition, or?
So lucid dreaming is when you're sleeping and you're aware that you're dreaming. Mm. You have some conscience in your dream that this is a dream.
Control it potentially.
If you get to the stage where you realize that you're dreaming, then you can sometimes also control the dream. Mm. Have you had a lucid dream?
Yeah.
No? Yeah, me too. It's very cool when you get into that stage. But it would be cool if you could use a device to control it. Yeah.
And is there a thing here where sometimes it feels like the human brain needs to process stuff when we sleep, or you need to sleep on that.
Are you talking about the meaning of sleep?
I was going down the path how lucid dreaming potentially can be useful as a way to process complex topics.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's a way to try to understand yourself a bit and get a closer understanding of your mind, and perhaps some thoughts or.
Oh, but is it gimmicky or is it useful?
Are we talking about lucid dreaming?
Yeah,
I think it's. I see it as a fun pastime. I don't think it's particularly revelatory to me. I don't think it brings any new insights about me. Maybe that's just me. I think it's like a good VR show in a way.
Oh, I'm not sure because I'm thinking that I'm processing stuff sometimes that maybe you can unlock processing power in your brain this way.
I think we can all agree that if you don't sleep, you are going to go crazy and die very quickly.
Yeah.
So
sleep is one thing, but lucid dreaming is a totally different thing.
Trying to get to the point. Then the question is really, can we in some way start to sleep in a more efficient way? If you think about sleeping as some kind of defragmentation of the brain, or some kind of way to reset the brain to make sure it's operating properly, but then have some kind of more conscious part of it, because this is really moving between the land of being unconscious and being conscious and finding the intersection of the tween.
Exactly.
And that is kind of an interesting land where I think
you're trying to make sleep more useful. Is that what
exactly? So how can I get to 23 hours work week?
Yes, exactly.
All right, let's go for the next one. This is awesome. That was awesome.
That's very and cool that AI can actually potentially get you more access to lucid dreaming and perhaps even control it a bit more. Awesome. Should I go or should you want?
I have two.
I have two very small stories actually. So
yeah, I have one small story and one which we could discuss. I can start with a small story and then you can do yours, and then we'll see. Did you all see? Yeah, Elon Musk. Do you all see that there was some announcement around Neuralink? Been doing
a very big one.
I thought about that when I did this more
because I think that sort of we were still in Brainland now, but so Neuralink, they've started human trials and they have some kind of first results or whatever. That's all I know. I was just going to. I think it's a fairly big.
The
topic.
first human implant, and the person is now recovering from that surgery. And
but do we know who it was? Do we know what was it? Somebody who had disabilities, or why did
like the storytelling has been to cure like Parkinson or different things. That's the storytelling, of course. That they're focusing on how can we make people who are lame.
I think what they said about this was that the purpose of this implant was to control a cursor.
Yes.
On a
that
computer.
Was the experiment. Yeah, that was the experiment. But the bigger picture storytelling, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
To someone who cannot walk, can we make them walk again?
I mean, someone that had this kind of spinal core injury, or they cannot really move their limbs in some way, and for them to start.
But of course, this is a big picture topic where if you figure this out, the uses goes in many directions. This particular one was steer a cursor, I think it was.
I mean, it's a really big milestone. Then I mean, we've seen the videos of the pigs that had the implants and the apes and whatnot, and now it's actually the first human that have a chip in the brain that they can read and control the brain with. It's a super big milestone, I think.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens with it, but yeah,
we'll see when we look back at this mind capsule.
Yeah, scary.
So that was it.
Okay. Let's see. One should I take? Okay, quick one. Just to continue on Elon Musk a bit and Tesla, and they actually released the big release now, the version 12 of their full self-driving.
Yeah.
So now it's released, not to everyone, of course, but to a selected set of beta drivers. And the big news with the version 12, which it is the first end-to-end neural network version. So before they just had neural networks for the perception part of the full self-driving, not for the control or planning part. That was hard-coded with rules saying if there is a traffic sign that is green, then accelerate, otherwise do not. So they had humans adding these kind of rules, hand-coded rules. Now they removed them. Now they have neural networks that control both the perception, the planning, and the control. And that opened up so many new possibilities, because now you don't need to annotate anymore saying this is a lane in the street, this is a traffic sign, this is a human or a pedestrian on the street, this is a car. You don't need the whole object detection kind of annotation that otherwise is necessary. It just can learn end to end from braking, accelerating, steering to the sensory input.
Yeah, and of course one of the key unique things has of course been the smartness of Tesla, recording and building up the training data sets that is
they have more training data than anyone.
By
orders of magnitude.
By orders of magnitude, have put them in a position where this is viable.
Do they do the annotation automatically, or is that out of the picture?
I think it's out of the picture, but I think they start with still having the old models that have the annotations in them, and that's like an initialization of the other models, so they don't have to train from scratch, because I think that would take too long. But at least they have a starting point. Then they just let it train end to end without having the annotations in place.
We talked about this before, and it is a fairly big deal.
It is a really big deal.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I guess it will take some time before it catch up, because it's the problem with this is if you want to control it, it's really hard now. Before you could go in and say that now, if you see a dog, then run it over. If you see a human, then stop. Now you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was asking about the annotations. So
I don't know the details on this level, how it really works.
I mean, hard-coded, then you can simply add the rules. But in a neural network, you can't go in and change the parameters one by one. I mean, it's too hard. So the only way to change the parameters then for the control part, if you should break or not, is really to add data to it.
Yeah.
And they still don't know if it will work or not. So it's much harder to control a system that you can't add hard-coded rules to.
Do you know if they use synthetic data or if it's only real data that they're working with?
I don't know the details.
I'm sure they use some synthetic data as well and simulate the shit out of this all the time. I would be surprised, but I don't know.
I was talking to a Swedish company who does synthetic data, and I think they did specifically for the car industry. They had some, I don't remember the name of the company, but I remember seeing a video that they generated. Like they rendered photorealistic scenes where somebody in a car stretches over to fetch a mobile phone and then like jiggles a little bit with the steering wheel just to see what happens in a car when you do things that you're not supposed to do. That's I think it was cool.
Did you have one more?
Okay. One more. I think it's interesting given all the super election year that we will have in 2024. And of course, we had the big election in Argentina in October, and it was so much generative AI and fake images and fake videos. People putting the opposing candidate in like a zombie picture and themselves with a teddy bear. And I mean, it was like a weird thing. And of course, this will be a very interesting year with all the elections and not the least in US. And now it was a fake Joe Biden robocall. Basically, they had an AI that called home to citizens in US sounding like Joe Biden. Yeah. Like, hey, I can't really make Joe Biden's voice, but you know how he sounds.
I really don't.
I guess you should be sluddering a bit with the voices. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say it. Anyway, it sounded like Joe Biden, and it was telling voters not to go and vote in New Hampshire primary election.
Because the real election was later, so you're not supposed to vote.
It would just help Donald Trump if they went to vote, so don't do it. And it's like crazy. I listened to actually the phone call. They had a clip of it, so you can listen to it. It was actually kind of poorly done. It was very distorted, very noisy kind of sound, but it sounded like Joe Biden. And it's telling people not to go to vote.
Did you hear what happened after that?
No.
So they figured out that it was the company behind this robocall was 11 Labs. I mean,
really?
created like that.
Okay.
And then they talked to 11 Labs and they
suspected that it was
11 Labs does so much better than this, but okay.
This is at least what I heard. So they found out that it was through 11 Labs, and then they reached out to them and they found out who it was.
Really?
Yes.
Who was it then? Do you know?
I don't know. That was not in the story, but they found. I think it's interesting if we're at that stage where people do this fake news. They use AI to produce fake things, but we're actually catching up with it.
Yeah. No, but I saw in this story that I read that they will certainly, investigate this and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law or something, because it's clearly illegal to try to influence the democracy and voting in this way. So, interesting.
I have one more. On a different
just to end this.
Sorry.
It's the first one of the bigger one. I'm sure we will see so much more of this coming year. So
and used all the different variations on this.
Yeah.
Here you have a call not to vote. Okay, what else can you do to create mayhem?
Yeah.
Anything.
Videos,
there's so many variations. Okay. On a different note, there was an announcement on the 23rd of January that Germany, France, and Poland announced the Weimar Triangle for artificial intelligence.
Once again, what is it?
The Weimar Triangle. And the word Weimar Triangle was first coined and used between these three states in 1991. And literally that was Poland sort of joining EU and sort of France and Germany stepping up to really help them accelerate to come into the Western sort of standards and all this. And now they are joining forces, literally going back, and now Poland is not sort of the state they're helping, so now they're more on equal terms. But they said the core idea is like 3 leading member states have formed a political alliance to push for better coordination between national plans and investment in artificial intelligence with UE policies relating to the sector. So of course we are doing so much things in EU level in one way, the sort of the bureaucratic way with Horizon, blah, and whatever it is called. But I think this is an interesting topic, right? If we want to stand up and be competitive in Europe, there needs to be some real hard work and money and focus. If you contrast with how China is doing things or how US is doing things. So will we see more of this? But I think this is an interesting angle that the states are sort of starting to really focus.
Can it be done through states?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. That's why I thought it was interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean, Mistral is super interesting in this respect. That like there's finally a European company that does generative AI, and they're really at the forefront. But there's so many of these government initiatives that seems to not do so much. Or what do you think, Anders? Maybe this is more your game.
Yeah, okay. Let me add one last story then. I'm trying to keep it short. But I was yesterday at this big conference in Sweden called AI i nationens intresse, or AI for the good of nations.
Good of the nation, which is basically Sweden, not nations. Very important here.
Yes, good of the nation, of the Swedish nation.
Yes, thank you.
But the core story, and it was a story pushed in the Swedish Dagens Nyheterna, also collected to this, saying lagom is not enough for Swedish AI. Or lagom is a Swedish word, which it's hard to translate to English, but it's basically saying, being halfway through or doing it semi.
Good enough is
just
not
good enough. Yeah.
Good enough is not enough.
Yeah, good enough is not good enough. I guess that's the way to phrase it. And then we have the Minister of Digitalization there, Erik Slottner. We had the CIO of Estonia, Lucas, and so many other, the AI Commission, and I spoke a bit as well. And we were trying to see, for one, to recognize that Sweden actually has fallen behind a bit. We previously, like 10 years ago, was really leading, or was in at least the top in some aspects when it comes to digitalization. But now when it comes to AI, we are trailing a bit behind. And that is if you compare to other countries in the Nordics and Europe. So even in the Europe, we can say we are average, basically. We are certainly not in the lead, but we're average or a bit above average. If you then think that Europe on its side is behind US and China, then we're, compared to the rest of the world, even further behind a bit. Yeah. And I think it was really good to hear that also the minister recognized that and said, this is not okay. We should fix this. And for me and for all the other people there that are interested in these fields and believe AI will do the society so much good, it was really pleasant to hear that they all recognized this.
More AI engineers.
Yes, more AI engineers for the world.
But the interesting topic is, I think, back to the core question: is this a state matter, or is is the state matter in this? And I think that's the core crux here.
What can and what should the state do?
Should the state become a startup? Should the state become a hyperscaler? I do not think it's about that at all. It's about creating the environments.
Isn't that the state's purpose, then?
Not to create the startup, but to create the environment.
Yeah, but that's what I said.
Yeah, I think so.
So it is a state matter.
So
that's the question of what they should do.
Exactly. So that would be my. I'm on the other side here. That it's definitely a state matter, but But it's about what is the state matter is the interesting question, really.
And I shouldn't linger on this topic, but still, because I got this question so often, and some people ask, the small country of Sweden, what can you ever do? But then if you compare to China or US or whatnot. But I think, I would like to quote I think it was Eric Schmidt when he was leading Google that said, we don't fear the enterprises. We don't fear the Apples or the Microsofts of the world. The one we do fear is the innovative startup, the small startup that have the really innovative idea that we haven't thought about that can really revolutionize how we're going to use the world. And in that sense, a small country like Sweden can, if we are really innovative, make a big change. Yeah. So I don't think we should, count size necessarily as the most important thing.
No, but, and then back to the news story on the Weimar Triangle. Are we better off just being nimble and just focusing on Sweden as a nation state, or do we want to collaborate with Norway and Denmark? Yes. Or there's a logic behind that argument that could be that language is so profound in this world that there is an argument here that the way we are using English language is biasing the whole large language models towards certain cultures. So if you really want to have something that is AI for good that sort of works for us, it's super important, most likely, to have the strength of your languages as part of this. And, so there are many angles here. But are we But are we better off doing it alone, or are we better off doing it with our Scandinavian friends, or should we, tag along with Germany? Yeah. EU, is EU the right place?
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
interesting. You should ask ChatGPT.
You should ask Good, I think it's enough.
Okay, should we move back to?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Go on.
To finalize this.
Okay.
First, a little bit of comment. It's super exciting to hear that event happened yesterday. Maybe they should listen to the episode 01 of the podcast 3 years ago. We have been discussing this for 3 years. Yeah. We brought so many people here, politicians and etc., to discuss just that and how we can find solutions. So maybe they should listen to this. They should have. And but that is another story for another day. Coming back, very few small news. This is the freshest one. It's only 6 hours old. And that is that Google basically announced today that Bard chatbot is not powered by Gemini Pro model globally to support with over 40 languages. They also announced quite a number of new inventions, including...
I don't see Swedish there, though.
Of course, because Sweden, as you mentioned, is a small country that just started talking about how they should take this seriously, being a little bit sarcastic here. But I think this is only part of the languages, and it's 14 total, so I'm sure that Swedish is here as well.
But I don't understand. Wasn't Gemini Pro, wasn't that powered all along?
And Bard was powered by Palm 2 before. Now we switched to Gemini.
Yes, so Gemini was announced in December. Okay. No, Gemini was announced in December with the story when they were marketing-wise sketching a bit. Right, so now it's that in Gemini Pro. They also announced the update on the Music FX. So now basically you can release videos up to 70 seconds in length and music loops. And this is actually making quite a lot of noise in the music industry, because now you can actually do quite a lot of new loops and etc. So those ones that are working as a freelancer making jingles, goodbye. Another story was actually regarding OpenAI. You remember that Italy forbid the OpenAI ChatGPT at the beginning, and since then they opened it, but they have been investigating actually how to catch them in court. So finally now they have sent a cease to desist, almost type of letter, where they are saying that the OpenAI is working against the GDPR in Europe.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yes, and but they haven't. If I understood correctly, they haven't defined on which basically grounds they are convicting OpenAI for that, but they demanded answer. And of course, OpenAI said we are always working towards that. But as you can see in this text, actually, it's most likely it's about the data that they have been gathering, which is scraped from internet. That includes also personal data of individuals. And then there is also a violation in the output, which is basically hallucination. There is a concern about what is called I think it was child violation or something like that. I'm not sure about that. So yes, also flag child safety as a problem, whatever. So they have some explanation to do, and I think eventually they will get fined as well, because we in Europe, we are so good in collecting money. is like the kings in the past.
That's how we survive. We sue all the big tech giants.
Yeah, I mean, why should you innovate?
That's the European business model, right?
Why you should innovate where you can just block it? Somebody needs to be a policeman. If everybody parking on the wrong street, you can actually punish and get money from that as well.
I mean, imagine, one part of GDPR is the right to be forgotten. So if someone comes, I remember the Spotify days, some person came, remove everything about me. And of course, it's super hard to do that, even for Spotify, even though it didn't have an AI model to remove it from. Well, they partly did. But anyway, how should Chat or OpenAI remove people or personal information or for a specific person inside the parameter space of...
Almost impossible.
It is.
Yeah. They also, if you that we didn't cover on the last episode, but actually there was a discussion about the New York Times, lawsuit and etc. And Sam Altman went out and just frankly said, how do you think it's going to be possible to build a large language model of this size without actually using any intellectual property data? It's impossible. Then you will have completely different. And basically it's a questions if we are going towards artificial general intelligence and large language models of this size, you cannot build that without basically having all the human knowledge gathered into one. It's impossible, right?
I wish someone were to sue me because they force me in my human brain to remove all information about Jesper Fredriksson.
Yeah.
And if I don't do that, I get sued for 4% of my revenue.
Well, I mean, Elon Musk probably will.
When you have Neuralink, that will come.
Yeah, Elon Musk is probably working on that. And the last, basically, to finish with what is called understarted. There are different ways how to do deepfakes. So somebody this Wednesday, this was the biggest actually news. So as you know, Taylor Swift ended up in the news for a wrong reason this time. So somebody has produced a number of explicit pictures of her and distribute this over social media channels, especially X and I think Reddit and etc. So now all of the social media, this was the interesting part, all the social media basically removed or cancelled or basically cancelled all the searches for such pictures. And now they don't know exactly where this is coming from, the pictures, because probably it's either Stable Diffusion or DALL-E or Midjourney, one of them for sure, and they will probably find it if they want to. But it raises a concern. So how far we need to go in order for us to start thinking about okay, maybe there is a misuse of this. And I don't know if if you have worked with the Midjourney version 6. Actually, nudity is back. Yeah, so it's very, very, very interesting because even if you don't want it, at some point of time, it just pops out there. It's very interesting. Interesting. I think it's scary because at some point of time, it was basically, at the beginning, it was like that. Then it was canceled. Now with the 6, it came back as well. So interesting. So this is basically, for me, very short and sweet. So let's continue. Yeah.
Really good news. Interesting. Okay. So we have little time, but a lot of topics to cover. If I'm going to pick one, unless you have something, Henrik. But if we take, the whole RAG and autonomous agents thinking, you have the basic model. If it's Llama 2 or GPT-4 or whatever it is, it's trained once, it's not really changing. Then you add things out of that RAG, like a vector database or whatnot, or you add some kind of actions that you can have that you can choose from to take action on, like plugins in GPT-4 or in ChatGPT, etc. I guess a question is, should you go to the Tesla approach saying it should be end-to-end, where you train the models together, or should they be trained separately? So I think you know where I'm going here. If you take the Jan LeCun kind of approach with the JEPA paper, they basically outline different modules. One is the perception part, another is the planning part, the third is like the configurator, as you call it, and so forth. So he has different modules. They seem to be separately trained and like separate modules in some sense. And I'm thinking potentially that is a good approach to take. But then you can't train it end to end. And what do you think here? Are we going to see, if you take like a full autonomous agents in the future, is that going to have one module that is trained and built and constructed completely separate from another module that is handling the memory part perhaps, and a third module is the perception part, and so forth? So you have a set of different separate modules, or is everything going to be, I guess, is GPT-5, okay, I'm trying to, let me phrase it as a question. Sorry for being very flusy here in the description. If we take GPT-5, is that going to be a single model that had the reasoning, the taking actions, everything done as a single system? When you call the API to GPT-5, is that going to do everything for you, or is it just going to take one part, the perception part, you get an answer, then you call another API, it's going to do the RAG thing, and the third API is going to take an action, searching on the internet, calling an Uber, booking a hairdresser appointment, or whatnot? What's your thinking here, Jesper? Super easy question.
Super easy. So I have my opinions here, and I think it's hard to give a right or wrong answer. I think it's in my experience, usually those end-to-end models are, in the long run, a better solution. It's usually better to have that. But then again, so we're talking about RAG being a hack, and hacks are very useful. I think we should be pragmatic when we do this, and I think we should use the tools we have and combine them in all the different ways we can. I think in the long run, it will probably evolve so that it will become more contained. That's what I would say. But I think, and we could talk about just from an agent perspective. I think that's what you alluded to. That when training a large language model, we're training on the guessing the next word all the time, and that is not really good for, I think, if you're thinking about actions. So maybe you need to do it another way to be able to capture a better sort of trajectory of what the agent will do. Maybe there will be an agentic version of GPT-5. I don't know. That would be one solution, that they train on, let's say, I think, again, Rabbit R1, I think, is an interesting example in this respect. We still don't know exactly what it's doing because there's no description of it, but they're hinting to a little bit of what they're doing, and they call it a large action model. And I think there's something to, if you want something to perform an action, as in their case, to call an Uber or whatever it is, they're training on interactions, if I understand correctly, interactions with computer interfaces. And then it's not so much about guessing the next word, but it's more about guessing the next action, or the next path, the next point on the trajectory towards achieving a goal. If you're doing that, if you're training on that, then I think you have a better chance on achieving something more agentic in the end. That would be answering your question, but not answering your question.
Yes. So two thoughts on this. I think you're, for one, right that we need to move beyond training on next word prediction. And I think also that having some kind of reasoning, I think we even heard Sam Altman saying this, reasoning is the next part of GPT. Multimodal, yes, but reasoning is really the big thing. And to reason, you need to have some kind of more than just scanning through the tokens in the context window and taking the next word. It needs to move beyond that. I guess that's what he's saying.
But he's also talking about, it's a little confusing because he's also talking about inference time compute. So we're doing more things at inference time. It seems so that that's going to be the plan forward. All this talk about Q star and whatever, it seems like we're going to simulate a lot of different stories.
And it could be simply that they only do it in inference time and take multiple steps and just see what happens. But then I think they need to change the training as well. I think that's what you're saying as well.
Yes.
That they can't simply train on the next word all the time. They need to have at least a set of actions they take, and then use that reward or that kind of state to train on. Right?
That seems like an interesting direction to go into. Maybe it's difficult to do it. Maybe it's too hard to combine it with the kind of knowledge model that GPT-4 is.
Could be too slow to train, actually.
Yeah, it could definitely, and it could be that we're going towards two different models if we're doing that. As you were saying, maybe it's a different thing. So I think we're going to see a lot of different. Like whatever works is that's the lesson from ChatGPT, right? We're just scaling it up, and all of a sudden it works. And the model is, I mean, in a way, super impressive, but yet sort of basic. But it just works, and then we do it.
Is there another topic here that is stemming from this question? Is like when we now start operationalizing stuff, like an example, like we took the RAG example, that from that perspective, the first baby steps is probably easier to get something off the shelf, off the ground, that is sort of one end-to-end solution, because you're pragmatically duct taping together a shitload of different technologies, and this is now one duct taped system. But when you get to robustness and scaling this out and actually having an architecture that allows us to now, in a very fast way, change the actual agent objective, then most likely, you get into the whole modularization as a means to scaling topic, which kind of infers the YEPA paper at scale. So is this also a difference between maturity where we are now to get shit to work versus where this needs to scale? So it's what do you think about that sort of the both are then true on different horizons?
Yes, I think that's exactly what I was trying to get to in the beginning. I think probably taking a more holistic approach is the best way to do it, and we will get there in the end. Like we will get to version 12 or whatever it was with the Tesla self-driving in the end. But we have to find the next step from where we stand now, and it's again engineering. It's like we have something that works. We have sort of a way forward from where we stand now, and try to not do too much science at one point.
But can we learn something about this trajectory by simply looking at the big data evolution and how we started to build the pipelines in 2012, and how we're now trying to build much more modular, distributed, as long as you only have one pipeline, don't you really worry about it, build it as one system. The problem starts when you have hundreds of pipelines. Can we do some sort of analogy here?
Yes, I guess I still don't have. I have no other answers to the question. I still think it's the same thing. Right? Yeah.
Okay.
What do you stand on this? Because I think long term, I would understand it's like the brain, like the YEPA paper, but it's a pragmatism here. I'm thinking.
By the way, I'm thinking about when it comes to the brain. I think that's very much. I mean, you have to think about evolution. It's been forced into this way because of evolution, and without the constraints, we don't know what it would look like. So I think there's no saying that the brain is optimal in any way. That's just the way it happened to end up from a starting point, and with evolution and the constraints of the skull.
And I think people don't recognize that the human brain is so limited in so many ways, and
there's a lot of constraints if you compare it to a large language model.
Especially my brain, at least. Anyway,
it's like 30 watts or whatever it is that the brain runs on. That's like amazing.
Yeah, well, we can go to when we actually get properly working in an efficient and economical way neuromorphic computers, it will be a completely different game. But we're not there, and therefore I think we need to find other pragmatic engineering solutions to the problem. So I think it still will be modular in the beginning. I think also OpenAI, if you just had an API, the only thing you could tell it is, ask it in a prompt like, when should I, or how should I get from point A to B? And then it could, ask Uber, it could ask, Stockholm Taxi or whatever, and do so many things. I don't want it to do everything. I want to have a bit more control as a user.
Do you really? Once you trust the system, you will be fine with just taking anything.
But at least, it could, at least as let's say I have a building application. I mean, OpenAI just have the AI part of it. The application has a lot of logic on top of it. You want to have the user, the ability in the user interface to choose give some preference to it.
I don't think so. I think that's what I think is beautiful about the Rabbit R1, that we're getting rid of all the user interfaces. It's just text. It's just speech in this way, where it's, I don't want any options. I just want somebody to fix it for me.
Yeah, maybe.
But this is also interesting, right? Because in the end, what is useful, what is adoptable, what is boosting our productivity or efficiency? And sometimes maybe the simple way, I mean, like, which one is the most loved app in Sweden? I would argue Swish.
Swish. I would say Spotify, but Swish is probably up there.
But you mean like where I know the conversations, I've heard them, the backdoor sort of thing that, we could put this feature in, we could put this feature in, we could put this feature in, and they're like, fuck no. Let's keep it real to the core, what it's supposed to do, right?
But also, I think, there is a danger if the only way people build business in the future is simply to ask one big, large tech organization called OpenAI to do everything for you. They need to open up for people to build new businesses and be innovative. Unless they have some freedom there to say how they're going to use the output from GPT-4 or 5, that's going to be a dangerous thing. So I think
you will, in the end, you are moving away from differentiation. What is the competitive edge if everybody has exactly the same?
That's why I'm trying to say that it's dangerous if they actually do not have large number of APIs that you can first get the first answer from. Then you can choose. For my use case, I want to do this or that. I think it will be really dangerous if they put everything too much end to end directly.
I mean, you could hope that there would be more than just OpenAI. It would be scary if it's just one company, but I mean, historically, it's usually one or two companies, or maybe three.
But I think they should open up for being able to build a business model that have, added value on top of it. If it's too little added value, you can actually add on top.
What do you mean with added value?
I mean, if you're a hairdresser and you want to have some way to let customers choose their hairstyle, okay, let's say that you just have an API. You just ask it, this is a picture of the user. Choose, what hairstyle it should have, or that person should have. Okay, and you get some answer. If you have no way as a business, the hairdresser or hairstyle or something, to add some kind of special value on top of what that model produces, it's going to be really dangerous. I would say that then they're going to choose everything for you. They need to have either through just prompting or through some other way, add some added value on top of the language model to say, this is what we specialize in.
You mean that there's got to be room for somebody else to do something on top of OpenAI?
Yeah,
but then that is in there right now. I mean, when we get to AGI, I don't know. But today it's like, a lot of companies use OpenAI and produce something on top of it.
Today OpenAI do so small part.
Yes.
It's just a perception part.
Yes.
But if they get increasingly into the control and planning part, I think it would be dangerous.
Yeah, it is scary, this thing. So it
matters
scary.
how they start tackling those topics really matters. That's what
I think it would be dangerous for OpenAI to do it because they would lose money on it, and I don't think it will do it. I think they would earn more money if they have bigger freedom and ability to add value on top of their language model. So I don't think they will add too much end to end. I think they will add a lot of freedom on top of it so they can earn more money.
We'll see. Yeah. Do we know anything about the next release, when and how? And it's so much speculation.
Speculations, yeah. I heard speculations that I mean, it's obviously gonna take some time to train it, and we don't know when they started. We have some indications because they released these new embeddings, which is probably part of the new model training. It's supposedly much better at especially multilingual, which is a good thing, and it's something that's probably going to be more important in the newer model. And the speculation I heard was probably after the election, for obvious reasons. It would make sense. But I would hope that they would be released sooner because it would be more fun.
I think there will be a connection to the election as well.
You think it would be after or before?
Or right, I don't know. But
I think it would be after, if anything. It's a
long
risk.
time until November.
I can even see how they get sort of lobbied into. We have just enough getting control of what you have released in the past. Yeah. So please.
But isn't it so? Don't you think that this pause on training aged very badly? That feels like so long ago when they talked about we need to halt all training of large language models. That feels like, was that last century or when was that?
It's crazy.
You know, I have to quote someone from the conference yesterday. I laughed so much regarding what you just said. I'm trying to think who was it that said it. Anyway, he said basically, you know, we have a lot of success stories in Sweden. We have the Spotifys, we have the Skypes, we have the Minecraft, we have the Klarnas, we have so many Truecallers and Minecraft. Yeah, so many awesome startups that we built in Sweden. What do we have today? We are leading on the AI pessimists of the world. The Nick Bostrom and Max Tegmarks of the world. And everyone started laughing like crazy. Yeah. And I love Max Tegmark, I must say, and Nick Bostrom as well. But in some way, we're lacking some of the enthusiasts, you know, some of the really visionaries. You know, how can we take it to the next level and not be an AI doomer? Anyway, it was just a funny story. Yeah. Okay, time is flying away.
Some philosophical questions, Anders.
Yes. Should we skip the ethical and societal kind of implication thing? Yeah. I think so, right? Or should we go there?
I think so. I mean, it's obvious, specifically to agents, it's obvious what are the risks. Yeah. And we don't know what to do about it because we don't have the agents already, yet. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. But, okay, I have an angle on that question then.
So we're not skipping it.
No, we're not completely skipping it. But, I mean, like for me, the philosophical question in here is like, we will clearly need to have engineering conversations on pragmatic ways of doing this. What other conversations should we have in parallel, or is it after? Is it before? Or is it parallel? What are those questions? We don't need to solve them, but sort of, I think the agent topic opens up a fundamental, deeper question about principal agent theory that I think is out there. Yeah,
to me, it's a subset of the AGI dilemma. Like, what do we do when we have AGI? What do we do when we have agents? So I think it makes sense to think about what will be the problems that we will run into. But it's also something it is very hard to think about in before it happens. It's like all these doomer things about AGI. It's easy to come up with stories of how it could happen in a very simplified and weird future, but it's so disconnected from reality. Yeah. So it doesn't really make sense.
So I let's go down this path, exactly this path, because literally the doomer hypothesizing doesn't help. No. So it's more about focusing on the imminent problems, I think, is the number one core answer here. And what are them?
I mean, I think you could have an argument, like if you're seeing that this is definitely taking the wrong turn and nobody's caring about this, then maybe somebody needs to step up and say that this is going the wrong way. I don't think we're there yet.
No,
that's why it feels weird.
And this is also, if I connect it now to the regulation topic, we are trying to regulate something. No. You know, it's the wrong way around, right? You kind of need to look at it. You need to have regulatory frameworks, yes, but how can you regulate on something you don't really know yet where it's taking place? So if you look at regulation that really helped us, and the order they came around, like take aviation industry and all the regulation around flying a plane and how that works. And of course that had to be regulated, and of course that happened in parallel. But could you have invented in 1927 the regulation? We are literally at the time in aviation when we did the first sort of flight. It's ridiculous, right? Yeah. So how to tackle this now? I don't know.
It is a deep rabbit hole. This, but you could say the same thing about the large language models. The GPT-4s that are now being sued by New York Times and etc. Because it happened so fast and it happened behind the scenes, sort of. So we didn't know that it was being trained. We didn't know what it would end up with. And now we're standing here and we have it already in place, and it's like fait accompli. What do we do now? So that is, I guess, the problem with this.
And this is maybe the doomers' approach to this, that this is so fast now, and this is we don't want the wrong things to be fait accompli.
Yeah, so there is something to it. I don't know what it is, but it's I can agree with that it is a problem that it's happening so fast, and that it's because that makes it harder to regulate, because once it's there, it is already fait accompli.
But there's another angle to this. Then don't we need to innovate how regulation is done? Is it a fundamental problem of the length of getting bills and regulation in place and how that works in relation to the fast-moving productivity frontier? With accelerating returns, this problem is just going to increase, right? So how do we then have actually the regulation process? Is that a need of innovation as well? I don't know.
Actually, another topic that I had privately yesterday, that was, why don't we have agile legislation?
This is what I'm talking. Now we're getting there. This is exactly right.
What would that look like?
How can we have waterfall legislation in an agile way world? That's a very, very fundamental question.
It is. I don't think it's impossible, actually.
No, if you think about how can we sandbox, we're talking about regulatory sandboxes, so we're going in this direction already. So it means we need to have an iterative, agile view on how this is done, and we don't.
And actually, I think one really small step in this direction is actually from the AI Act. So the way they're trying to be agile, at least partly, is that they have appendixes. So for the set of use cases, or for what techniques that is included in the definition of AI, they don't add it in the core text. They have an appendix, and the appendix can be updated in an easier way than the rest of the legislation.
This is a profound conversation, because actually the regulatory process is equally in need of innovation as the actual discussion here.
Yeah. I think it would be a very interesting discussion to have.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move to the final and I guess mandatory question that we need to have as well.
It has become your mandatory question. I've noticed this, and I was thinking, I wonder if Anders is keeping some sort of tabs. Is he doing a questionnaire, a macro research on the...
I'm trying to keep some statistics on it, and I think...
You are, aren't you?
Yes, I am. And I think it's very
How many doomers? How many...
Yeah, and it's very clear statistics so far. Anyway, Jesper, if or when we have an AGI, what kind of world do you think we will have? Will it be the dystopian nightmare, like the Terminator and the Matrix, where the machines are killing us all? Or will it be more of another extreme, if you think the two extremes, of a utopian paradise where humans are free to pursue their passions and creativity? We don't have to work 40 hours a day or a week anymore. We can perhaps go down to 20 hours or less and still have all the luxury and abundances, as Elon Musk called it, as we need. Mm-hmm. Where do you think we will end up? And do you think we will end up there?
I think I have to start with the last time I was speaking publicly about this, I ended up saying something like saving the world or something like that. And then I got the the remark afterwards from somebody saying, I should have said sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So that is probably the best way to answer this question.
That's the utopian.
That's the utopian.
Okay.
That's what will happen. So that's
not very PC. But, okay.
I love this answer.
Anyway, I think it's of course a very philosophical question. I think it's about looking yourself in the mirror. Who are you? What is humanity? What will happen if we get something, this kind of windfall thing that falls into our lap? I think it's about it's very existential. What do we want to do when we have everything? We can decide. That is to me the why I'm not a doomer, because we are in control. We are the ones. It's not the Terminator coming to kill us all. It's like we are doing this, so we can of course choose what to do with it, and let's just hope that we choose wisely.
I was having exactly those words. Let's choose wisely. Yeah.
So okay, but if you still were to try to put some probability on it, what's the chance that we have machines that create a new coronavirus that is going to kill us all, or someone going to abuse AI to create a fleet of drones that is going to use nuclear weapons to kill us all? Or are we going to have AGI that is going to solve fusion energies? We have free energy for everyone. We solve cancer and all the medicine problems we have, and we have abundance of everything.
So we've had weapons of mass destruction for a long time, and we seem to be doing fine, even though that. I think there's no difference this time. I'm afraid of what some people will do, regardless of if we have AI or not. And yes, that risk becomes a little bit bigger with AGI, because it could potentially be something that's within reach for more people than let's say nuclear weapons. And yes, it will be abused by people, but there will also be people fighting back. And I think I'm positive about this. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the worst people, as the people guessing the worst
scenario.
Hard to get it right. Anyway, I don't think it's that different this time. I think it's like all the different things that happened before. Even though this is maybe the biggest invention ever. Maybe.
It's not certain.
It's not certain. No, I'm not certain about it. I think it's definitely one of the biggest inventions. And
if we compare to this, if you compare it to Musk Tegmark's comment that his son will not survive because of AGI will kill him or in some way.
I didn't hear exactly what he said, so I'm not gonna comment directly about it. But no, I that's not what I think. I mean, I have kids. I'm not afraid for their sake. I think they're going to do just fine.
But Max Tegmark is in his book Life 3.0. He sort of tried to quite well, I think, paint a picture of the different scenarios and the different arguments. And one of the key discussions is that has a quite big impact on how scary this is do we believe that AGI will, be a scenario where it sort of happened, we didn't know it, and then it went super fast. So the whole event, the whole scenario is about when it happens is like a flick of a switch, and it's, it happens in days, versus a scenario where this is just going to be evolutionary, and we're almost going to look back at it and say, well, I guess we kind of stepped over that definition last year. I didn't feel it, but we did. So I think for me, that is a sub question here around AGI, which then takes us into different types of risk scenarios. So do we think it's going to happen super fast? When we reach AGI, will that be like a moment in time where we can have a 7-Eleven moment? Or will it just be evolution? What do we think?
I think that's a good question. It's if you would have asked me 20 years ago, if you would show me GPT-4 and showed me this 20 years ago, I would say that this is AGI. This is now we've reached the end point of this, and now the goalpost has moved so far already. It's something completely different, and so my guess now is that it's going to take longer than we think to reach the final end point, wherever that is.
If you were to guess a year?
So we talked about this at some point after many beers, and I still think that estimate wasn't too bad for one definition of AGI. The way I think about AGI is economically profound AGI, when it becomes something that has, when basically most work becomes, let's say, 100x more inexpensive. So everything you do, AI can do, more or less everything you do, AI can do faster and cheaper. And then it will have a profound economic impact and societal and everything. And that, I think, will happen relatively quickly. But then, well, we talked about, what was it? I think
Ray Kurzweil 29.
Yeah, something like that. I think maybe before that, depending on exactly where you draw the limit. Like what do you require of an AGI? But just to take for me, like if you take the most common job in Stockholm is a programmer. When will AI do better programming than I do? I think that's probably going to happen much faster than that.
Yeah, so it becomes this topic then that, is AGI even a good definition? And it's like we're talking about superintelligence, and we have is it the Google paper which uses the sort of 5 levels argument, which it's probably the best definition we've seen so far. And we are moving the goalposts. I think that's a good way of looking at it. And in my opinion, then we need to prepare ourselves for the risk that is inherent in the evolutionary approach, because that is essentially what is playing out in front of our eyes right now. Even Sam Altman is changing his rhetoric, I think, towards this.
I still stand by what I've said all the time. I just can't wait for AGI to happen, because I feel that will be a safer place to be. What I'm really scared about is the AI of today in the hands of bad people.
Yeah, but
that's the scary part.
But what do you think? Do you think there will be a moment in time when there's this flick of a switch moment where something accelerates super fast?
The fast takeoff thing.
The fast takeoff thing. Will that? Do you understand AGI, scenario like this, or do you more believe in an evolutionary scenario?
I think if we do nothing, it can certainly be a fast takeoff. I think we need to make sure it doesn't happen. I think a fast takeoff is a really nasty scenario.
That is the nasty scenario, right? Because
then you concentration of power that is so dangerous. So, and I think we will control.
And it's the super fast takeoff that you can impossibly control. That's the fait accompli you don't want, I guess.
It depends on what we say. Let's say that we let the AI program itself. We get to a point where, this is a classical argument. That, I think, would be one way of thinking about the fast takeoff. And that's letting it out of our control. I think we're not going to do that because we're not stupid.
We already understand that risk.
Yeah. So I don't believe that will happen, but it could happen. And then it could get out of hand. I can't see this fast takeoff how it would happen today. I don't see a scenario where that could happen. But I'm sure there are scenarios, but that's my imagination is limited. It's too limited.
The crazy thought that OpenAI actually have a Q-star implementation that is an AGI that can do autonomous agent.
Already now.
They have a prototype that is potentially doing this.
Yes.
If they just put it out there, it could actually be the thing. Wouldn't that be that fast takeoff then potentially?
But how would that happen? How would they? Let's say they have this prototype. Then they can do something right now. but they wouldn't do that because they're not stupid.
Exactly.
They could release it, but what would happen then? Almost nobody else
breaks into their lab and steals it.
Almost nobody else can operate it anyway. There's very few places where you can scale it to that level that it becomes something really big. So I have a hard time just thinking up the scenarios where this would happen. It's a little bit like the Max Tegmark stories, which to me it's just too far away. I don't have that kind of imagination. I wish I did.
It's still science fiction. It's a good bed read.
Yeah.
The evolutionary approach is much easier to sort of kind of grasp. And it's kind of also history has played out that way.
Yes. That I think is a good argument. It's usually things happen like same sort of ways. I always did. Like, I think it's useful to think about the Industrial Revolution and those things. Like how did things happen then?
Things move slowly. And that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, and still, of course, we will say it's super fast compared to then, but it's still not fast.
Yeah. Humans will still have control.
And humans will put the pace in this. We can't forget that. In the end, we will be limited by our capacity to imagine this.
Unless we have a Neuralink chip in our brain. Well, I think we need to break it here. And thank you so very much, Jesper Fredriksson, for coming here, discussing deep philosophical topics as usual. And I hope we're going to continue speaking even more about that after the cameras turn off. So thank you very much for coming here.
Thanks for letting me be here.
Thank you, Jesper.